So, it's that time, Anime of the Year, which this list is obviously just my personal views. Before I get started, I wanted to make a few things clear. First, I watch a lot of anime, but not everything. Like 200 plus shows come out a year now. I do not have time for absolutely everything. I didn't even get to everything I actually wanted to watch. For example, I failed to finish Pluto even though I was looking forward to it. It seemed solid from the bit I watched, but alas, I'm doing this video for a deadline, so I kind of ran out of time. Second, I tend to rate things on get checks on how entertained I was. I might comment something annoyed me in one thing, and that same thing might exist in another show on my very list. It likely bothered me in that, but it might not have bothered me as much for various reasons. If you want me to try to explain, just ask in the comments, but sometimes it actually just boils down to, it just didn't. Third, I don't give a crap about sequels or alternative versions of series. I prefer to highlight new series because, well, they tend to get overlooked by sequels and whatnot. If a series isn't new, it just won't be on my list. For example, I'm actually a big fan of Spy Family, but you won't find it here because it only had a sequel season this year. Fourth, there will be vague spoilers. It's hard to talk about any form of entertainment being completely spoiler-free, but I'll try not to spoil anything beyond like the first episode. That being said, there's a couple shows that I might have to go into a bit more detail because the starts are kind of And there's one in particular that I know I'm going to go into more detail because the premise is just so crappy and it just gets so much better later that it's just not funny. Finally, if the season of anime didn't end of the year it started coming out, I also won't include it at all. I'll include it in the next year instead. So shows like Apothecary Diaries and Frieren, which you might expect on a list like this, won't be on my list. They'll be on my list next year, as well as Shangri-La. And one show that started in 2022 will be on my list for this year because it also didn't finish in the year it started. With that being said, let's go! At number 10, I have My Clueless First Friend. It's kind of like a cuter version of Kimi ni Todoke, which, if you don't know that one, it recently got a dub release on Netflix. In My Clueless First Friend, our main character is seen as a gloomy outcast by her classmates, and there's a new transfer student that thinks the rumors are cool and hijinks ensue as he befriends her and they catch feelings. It's an adorable series and the characters are fun, but I personally could never shake the feeling that it would have just felt better if the characters in the story were a few years older, as, well, most of the plot felt like it was written for characters that were older instead of around the 10 years or older so that they were. It just always caused me a bit of a disconnect that left me unable to really root for the leads to advance their feelings. And I'm just not a fan of romance shows where the leads barely advance their feelings at all. Overall, it was still adorable, and if you like slice of life, you'll likely quite enjoy this. At 9 is Heavenly Delusion, and holy heck is this one a mess. But it's an interesting mess. There's two different stories going on here. One involving a bunch of kids in a lab with tons of secrets slowly being unraveled, and another following two leads as they travel a world filled with dangerous monsters as they search for a place called Heaven. Really, it's the type of show that's hard for me to rate, as there's a number of aspects I found quite interesting, but also a bunch of aspects I outright hated, not to mention aspects that I never really figured out how I felt about them. Anyway, overall I enjoyed it, and if you're the type that likes weird stuff, give this one a look. So in 8th is a series that I imagine most people won't even know, The Great Cleric. I'll get this out of the way. Its production values leave some to be desired. This is where you learn that production values do play a role in my enjoyment, but they're not super high up on my list a lot of times. So with The Great Cleric, you have a pretty generic isekai setup with this one. A salaryman yada yada picks skills yada yada is special blah blah blah. If you absolutely detest isekai shows, don't even bother watching this one. Run away, run away, run away. But if you can stomach them, here's one that actually ended up being surprisingly enjoyable for me. Without going into too much detail, I liked this one for two main reasons. There's not really any harem crap going on. The main character is doing other stuff and not paying much attention to the errand flags, and there's a nice power curve to everything. While he is special, by the end of the series, there's still plenty of characters more powerful than him. Meaning that, unlike most isekai shows, I actually be interested in a sequel to this one, because the other shows have characters that are already on the level of gods, and by the end of the first season, I'm already mostly done with the idea. It's just a fun ride from start to finish. And 7th, we have more isekai with campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill. So you're probably figuring out quickly I don't actually hate isekai shows. But unlike the last one, I will say even if you do hate them, maybe don't completely give up on this one. This show's less of a typical isekai show and more of an isekai spice and wolf with a focus on cooking. It's just a story about a guy traveling with the ability to buy goods from our worlds and using that ability to build some riches, friends, and above all, cook yummy food. It was just a fun, comfortable show that wasn't super isekai-y, just enjoyable. Number 6, I have Hell's Paradise. With Hell's Paradise, we have a fun action show with a bunch of murderers being sent to a nasty little island on a quest in order to be pardoned for their crimes. We follow our main character, Gabimaru, who's this cold-hearted killer who surprisingly has a wife he loves he wants to get home to her. It kind of reminded me a bit of JJK in style, which I also had fun with, and sometimes I just want a cool action show. It's done fairly well, and it was an enjoyable watch. There's not really much more to say here. If you want a fun shonen stabby action show that's a bit dark, go pick this one up. At 5, there's Dead Mount Deathplay. So when I watched this show, I didn't know this little detail. But I'll start with this. I'm a fan of Durarara and Bacano, and it just so happens that Dead Mount is written by the same person. I will say I preferred both the others, but I still had a lot of fun with this. Now, for starters, Dead Mount is, you guessed it, an isekai. Well, a reverse isekai, as it brings a fantasy character into our world. The necromancer known as the Corpse God comes into our world and takes over the body of Polka and starts messing up stuff in our world. Lots of stuff goes on in our world, and we find out basically he's a good guy, even though he gets involved with shady people. And it's just a lot of fun as things get crazier and crazier. I enjoyed the cast, I enjoyed their takes on some tropes, as they were switched up enough just to be fun. You know, sharks are far more fun than just being an anime otaku. At number 4 is The Dangers in My Heart, and this is where my explanations are going to have to start to get longer. The premise of the show? Garbage. The first episode of the show, even the first few episodes, not great. The main character in the first episode is absolute trash. We're met with a premise where this edgelord piece of shit goes on about wanting to kill the most popular girl in school. Meanwhile, early on, the characters come off rather shallow, and even in the first few episodes, the show's also far too horny for its own good. So despite everything, it's still sitting at number 4. And if I included the currently airing season 2, it would probably be at least number 3, if not number 2. So what the heck happened? How did this piece of trash that seemingly had nothing redeemable about itself at the beginning turn itself around? It's quite simple. Even by the end of the first episode, it's already changing quite a bit. But after a few episodes, we've already pretty much thrown away the initial garbage premise, and our main character is already coming to terms that he has feelings and doesn't actually want to hurt the popular girl. Not only that, but we've been spending time with both characters and fleshing both of them out quite a bit, and learning that even the popular girl isn't, this perfect character, but she's also really awkward in her own way. So we have two really awkward, quite adorable characters just interacting with each other a lot of times. So, part of the reason I couldn't rate my clueless first friend higher is because at the end of the day, it felt like Dangers in My Heart was doing everything that show wanted to do, just better. It has the awkward, misunderstood character, adorable interactions, but I'm far more attached to the characters and loving my time with them at this point. I legitimately think I'm looking forward to the new episode of Dangers in My Heart each week right now, more than I'm looking forward to the new Apothecary Diaries or Freerin episodes, which is just such a mind-blowing change from the start of the series. It basically fixed every issue I had, and at this point, they're just truly adorable characters that I just cannot get enough of. Alas, I cannot overlook that craptastic start and premise, and I have to knock it down a few pegs because of it. But if you want a really fun and eventually adorable romance anime, do force your way through the beginning of Dangers in My Heart. I think it's really well worth it. Third, we have the last official isekai on this list with The Eminence in Shadow. This one's the one that started in 2022, but didn't finish that year, and we got even more in 2023. So, this one is edgy, and the first episode's not great. It takes a bit for this one to get going. The outfits on the female characters are not great, and the main character's not really a good person. That all being said, I ultimately had a blast with this one. Once I got past the slower start, the humor and stupidity of it all just kind of started hitting me just right. It ended up reminding me a lot of the first season of The Misfit of Demon Academy, which I ended up enjoying quite a bit after the first few episodes. And while there are a ton of women who want to be with the main character, he's so dense and stupid, nothing really happens there. They actually just end up leaving and doing their own thing and only interact with him from time to time. Basically, the show's far greater than the sum of its parts, and I just had a ton of fun with it. The series knows it's being stupid like Konosuba does, and at times it just embraces it, and at other times it just does its fun, silly thing with big events. It's just a fun ride. At second is Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. And here we have a shoujo show, and I'd love to say it's just a great full adaptation of the manga. No notes, just go watch it. It's a great show where the female lead has agency, and there's nothing more to say, and yeah, well, most of that is true. Seraphy does have a good amount of agency, and it's one of the reasons I did enjoy my time with it, as she's constantly going out and doing stuff, eventually. While she does have to be saved from time to time, as she's mostly a normal girl, she also does actively play a role in most things, and it's nice to see given her introduction, as there's fears she could have just been the type to be protected. Speaking of her introduction, I have to get that out of the way. A common trend in many shoujo is older guy, younger girl. In a lot of recent ones, they've for some reason been making it very clear the younger girl is 15 and exactly 15. And this one is no different. There would be absolutely no changes to the series if she was, say, 20. Zero at all. Nothing about this story would change in any way. But she's 15. And they do an absolutely crappy job of explaining the male's lead age. And he's far younger than it implies, but he's still many years older than her. The relationship is weird in general, but it's also less weird than you would think given the setup. And as long as you get past that, you actually have a really solid political fantasy series that to some degree reminded me of the 12 Kingdoms, and that ultimately I really enjoyed. I just can't not mention that introduction stuff. So, moving on. So, at number one for me is not an isekai show, but a reincarnation show, which is, adjacent to isekai, with Oshi no Ko. I imagine most people know what this show is already, as it was quite popular, but I'll get into what it is in a little bit. I absolutely adored this series as a manga, and I adored it as an anime. If you've seen it, you'll know why, but I was really worried about how they were going to handle the intro to this series, and then they decided to adapt it into basically a movie, and it absolutely knocked it out of the park. That being said, I lied. I actually am not going to go into details about what this one's about, as it's better if you just go into it. It's not going to be strictly on my list. Oshi no Ko is going to be on a bunch of people's lists. So just trust us and give it a shot. There's a bunch of stories in it, and a lot of them are fun. And personally, this is the only show that I gave a perfect score to on Mal this year. So yeah, just go watch it. Give it a try. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but personally, I love it. I also have a few honorable mentions in no real order. These are just shows that didn't quite make the cut, but I still feel like talking about. First up is Insomniacs After School. Look, as someone who suffers from really bad insomnia, it's not that big a deal to talk about it with others and get some help. That being said, this is a cute series and the leads are good. This one just didn't quite click with me as well as others, but it's still well worth a watch, especially if you like slice of life. We also have Skip to Loafer. I enjoyed the lead characters and enjoyed the first half. I just kinda hated the second half. And that's why I didn't make the cut. There's a character involved in backstory in the back half that I just did not care about at all. I'm totally game for a second season, but to that back half. It's well worth a watch if you like slice of life stuff, though. My Happy Marriage. I enjoyed the lead characters well enough, though again, I kind of just hated the back half of the series. It was doing a lot of stuff that just wasn't clicking for me. I'll watch the confirmed second season, and it was a fight and romance series, though it was a bit heavy-handed with the drama at times. But, again, just did not make the cut because of the back half for me. And finally, there's Saving 80,000 Gold in Another World for My Retirement. The show's stupid. It has dumb jokes. I have absolutely zero interest in a second season. That being said, I cannot deny that I was quite entertained by it, and unlike most of the other shows on this list, it did not fail to make the cut because of the ending. The ending of this show is just quite something. It just didn't make the cut because there's just too many things about it that are just too stupid, but I had a fun time with this one. So yeah, that's my Anime of the Year list. I'm sure it's different from many others, but hopefully it leads to people finding a new show that they end up loving. I enjoy talking about anime with people, and, well, I'm considering doing more anime videos down the line. The top one I'm thinking about doing is a look into the spring season, but we'll see, as it would take quite a bit of time, and I just have a lot of other videos on my plate as well. But if you're interested, just leave a comment down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, do try checking out my other videos and hitting that like button, or even subscribe. Till next week, I hope you all stay wonderful.